coming back in here, let's make some constraints. Specifically, we're going to want to create some glue constraints. So I'm going to say, let's split at least the door out and make that into one solid chunk, and then everything else can be the rest of it. So I'm going to go click on this, go into this mode, and I'm going to say find the door here. Just click on door. We don't even have to select in here. And that's enough. Just press enter. And you can see, oh, didn't actually get it. Let's try that again. There we go. So now the door and basically everything below it is coming out of the left side of this split. And if we look at the right side, it's everything else. Great. So what we want to do is we want to make constraints that basically glue all this together. And that's pretty easy, as it turns out. We don't even need to do any like proximity-based anything, because we want all this stuff to be glued to each other, and it's never going to break. That's what makes it easy. I can just say delete geometry, but keep the points. So now we have a whole bunch of points that have the names of all the pieces, as you can see here, that are in the door, all this stuff here. So we have all that. Let's just make a primitive that connects them all together, because ultimately the glue constraints, as we know, are just primitive lines that connect everything together. And we could do that on this side too, as you can see. Now the problem with that is that it's only two primitives. So like this is one primitive here connecting 22 pieces together. For when we're making our constraint networks, they actually have to be individual line segments connecting two pieces at a time. So what we can use is this handy thing here called convert line. Convert line will simply break them all up into segments. So now you can see 37 primitives. They're all individually numbered here, as opposed to here where they were just these two. So now we have individually numbered segments. We'll make a primitive wrangler and say, what are you? You guys should be called, constraint name should be called, I don't know, how about glue? And we'll make, and once again, we don't have to do f at in order to do a float, but it's more verbose and maybe clearer to follow what I'm doing. The float in this case is going to be -1, 0, -1. That's going to mean that it is never going to break. So we'll call this glue constraints. So it's not the kind of glue that will break under some kind of hit. It's the kind of glue that will just hold everything together as one solid chunk. And we'll call this constraints. Save that. So we'll dive back in here and we'll say constraint network. Did I get that? I don't think I did. Constraint network. So I'm just going to put it here. It doesn't really matter where you put it, just as long as the object actually feeds into it at some point. So constraint network, it's going to point to that constraints thing we just set up. Again, export relative paths, because it's just pointing to the thing above it. And we want to say, this is annoying. So this has this whole expression in here that's trying to see if the constraints are changing outside. It's pretty rare, I think, that you want that. So what I often end up doing is just break it, delete it. On the first frame, say yes, override with the SOP, meaning load this in. But on the next frame, no, don't ever read it in again. Just read it to what we initialized it the first time, and that's that. So with that set, we'll feed this glue constraint relationship in here. Let's call it glue. Well, we'll call it glue here more importantly. Change the strength to 1 so that it's multiplied by the -1. And now you'll see, there's one of those sirens for all of you that love listening to sirens in this video. There it is, press play, and there you go. Now it's just moving as two pieces. Now the big piece doesn't move because it's already resting on the ground. The little piece is still not colliding because we told it not to, but it is falling and behaving the way that it should. So, wonderful. So we are moving along.